Welcome, welcome, Paralympic fans. We are in day 2 here at the Ice Cube in Beijing at the Paralympic Winter Games. You join us at the National Aquatic Centre, as it is normally. But for the next week, we've frozen all the water and we've been enjoying Paralympic Winter Games wheelchair curling. And we're in session 5 of the round robin. And we have a tight match-up today. We will be watching Team Korea playing Team Norway. The teams will just be welcomed onto the ice.
Ladies and gentlemen,
traditional pipes of Scotland.
To this session of wheelchair curling.
That's how the teams are getting on so far. Korea still looking for that first win, but Norway jumping out the blocks and 2 wins out of 2 already. There's our mascot, Shui Ronron. I think she's been enjoying the curling very much. We've seen her every day. And here are our 2 teams in our featured game this evening. Lead thrower for Korea is Baek Hae-jin. Second thrower for Korea, Jung Sung-hun. Third thrower for Korea, Jang Jae-hyuk. Fourth and skip for Korea, Go Seong-nam. A message of love, presumably. I don't speak Korean, I'm afraid. There's our local fans. They've been enjoying their curling this week as well. And here is the Norwegian team. Sissel Løken, lead thrower for Norway. Second thrower, Geir Arne Skogstad. Third for Norway, Ole Fredrik Siversen. And Norway's fourth and skip, Jostein Stordal. All the teams out on the ice, ready to play. Our local fans ready to enjoy. And that's how the table stands at the moment. Our 2 featured teams, Norway riding high. They have 2 wins out of 2. They're in second place at the moment. And Republic of Korea, they're in 10th place at the moment, still looking for that first win. But plenty of games out there yet. So this is how we've been doing so far. Korea lost in their first round robin to debutants Latvia. And earlier on today, they lost a very close game against Switzerland in an extra end that went right to the last stone. So Korea not having a bad time, or not playing badly by any stretch, but it's a cliche, but it's true. There are no easy games out there. Norway, in contrast, they have picked off 2 strong teams out there. The Great Britain team, Norway beat 7-5, and Slovakia, another strong team, they beat 9 shots to 3. So the teams wishing each other good curling. Normally we would shake hands, but we're still being cautious about spreading infections. So at the moment it's fist bumps all round. And we have 2 flag bearers actually on the ice today. Sissel Løken, she was the flag bearer for the Norwegian Paralympic Winter Team. And Baek Hae-jin from Korea, she was the flag bearer for the Korean team. So we're in quite illustrious company out there. It will be Korea who have last stone in this first end, so Norway will be throwing first stone. And we shall have our first opportunity towards the unique delivery of Sissel Løken. First stone in this first end, session 5 of day 2 at the Wheelchair Curling Championship at the Paralympic Winter Games. And this looking like lovely start from Norway. Look at that. Somebody was making good use of their pre-game practice. Really nice start there from Sissel Luchen. And you may just be able to see behind the players there, under the Korean flag, LSFE with a little red stone. That means last stone, first end. And both teams have a 9-minute pre-game practice. You can do whatever you want during your 9 minutes to get yourself into shape. And at the end of that 9-minute practice, a little bit of an early miss there from Korea. At the end of that 9-minute practice, both teams throw 1 stone in the clockwise direction, 1 stone in the anti-clockwise direction, and whichever team is cumulatively closest to the centre, they have the choice of last stone in the first end. Technically, if they wish, they could choose to play first, although I've never seen a team do that. So it was Korea who were cumulatively closer, and they selected to have last stone in this first end. So second stone for Sissel Luchen. She has that very particular delivery. It's unique in wheelchair curling. She starts with the stone and herself in the middle of the sheet and uses both hands equally to release the stone. And absolutely no rule against that. It certainly works for her. We shall get into the pedigree of both of these teams. And this Norwegian team particularly successful. So if you're learning wheelchair curling or you'd be interested in wheelchair curling, that's another possible technique. We have a mixture of right-handers and left-handers out there. Sissel Luchen is the only one who has a B for both.
Wait.
And as long as it's the stone starting in the middle, the stone starts in the right place, then you can use either hand or both. And that's nicer from Baek Haejin.
Oh, that's it.
And she's hung around herself there, that red stone on the left of our screen. Just thrown there from Baek Haejin. And that's nice already. Korea with last stone in this first end. They would love to get a nice strong start here. Still looking for that first win, Korea, but only 2 games each team so far. Still loads of points out there. First stone of this game for second thrower for Norway, Geir Arne Skogstad. And that's a happy start from him. He removes that Korean stone and gets a roll towards the centre. Always good to get that first stone out of the way. This makes sense for Korea. Just trying to remove those Norwegian stones from play. It's only the first end. The score is 0 each. No need for Korea to go all out aggressive here when there are already a couple of Norwegian stones in. So this is the right idea. Let's just try to remove some Norwegian counters and keep things simple in this first end. He's done that very nicely. And his own red stone is again hanging around at the front of the house. That's the rings. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, why we call the rings in curling, why we call that the house, because obviously it's nothing like a house. But you will hear the curlers saying that stone's just gone into the house or edge of the house, that kind of thing. Every one of these Norwegian curlers on the ice, not in this constellation, but at least one of these Norwegian players has been at every single Paralympic Winter Games since wheelchair curling was introduced in 2006. So heaps of experience out there in the Norwegian team. And doing well at just keeping things simple in this first end. But a little bit of a half shot there. As we can see, that Norwegian stone just rolled out, and that means that Korea now has a chance to clear the house completely, clear away all the dangerous Norwegian stones. That's a lovely view. You can see the stone right in the middle there. And that's a very typical setup if you're in a wheelchair curling game. So you have your delivery stick, which we'll talk about a bit later. Your colleague, in this case, Jang Jae-hyuk. He is holding the wheels of Jung Sung-hun. Make sure he's stable, doesn't misbalance or so. And then the third player down that end of the sheet, Baek Haejin, they will often be timing the stone. How long is the stone taking to get from one end to the other? And that time, there you can see the Norwegian skip, Jostein Stordal, he's holding his stopwatch as well. And the amount of time the stone takes to get from one end to the other, that gives the players information about how fast the ice is, how strong do they need to throw the stone to get it from one end to the other. Norway quite happy to just, again, keep things a bit simple. That stone not quite touching the house, the rings. And this is good to see from Korea. Korea could simply remove that Norwegian stone. That would be the very defensive way of doing it. Very conservative play, very conservative tactics. But it doesn't look like that's what they're trying to do. Looks like they're going to try and use that Norwegian stone just played as a guard. And the weight's not bad at all. It didn't quite curl as much as they were hoping. But that's good to know. Second stone in this first end for Ole Fredrik Siversen. No trouble for him. Perfect would have been if he just caught the stone on the other side, and then if he would have rolled a little bit towards the centre, use their own stone to get behind that guard, but that's fine. It does, though, give Korea a second opportunity to go for that same shot. So second chance at same kind of throw for Jang Jae-hyuk. Korea have last stone in this first end, the last stone advantage. He's better this time, isn't he? There we are, learning from that first shot. And wow, indeed, what a really nice stone there from Jang Jae-hyuk. And their courage rewarded there, Korea. It would have been easier to, and more conservative, less risk to just remove that yellow stone out of play, keep it very simple in this first end. But they had good courage. They went for the aggressive stone. Let's try and use that yellow stone as a guard. And now Norway have a problem. That red tucked in beautifully behind the yellow. There you can again see the procedure. Brakes on. Sissel Luchen holding the wheels for stability. And Geir Arne Skorgstad ready with his stopwatch to time the stone. First stone in this game for Norwegian skip Jostein Stordal. And that stone just curling a little too much, but he has opened it up. He's moved that guard away from being in front of the red. That's a nice angle, so Norway can see all of that red for next time. But Korea will be hoping to use that pressure to get, we'll be able to use that little mistake to get a second Korean counter in and put more pressure on Norway. 2 stones for Korea still to come, only one for Norway.
화이팅, 화이팅.
Local fans are cheering the Chinese team, who are also playing in this session. Here in our featured game, we're watching Korea against Norway, and first stone of this game for Korean skip Go Seong-nam. He's the left-hander out on the ice tonight, but as you can see, the stone always starting in the same place. The stone always starts in the middle. And you can be either to the left or right, or exactly behind it, as we saw from Cecil Luchen. And that's got a happy little redirection there. The weight was really nice on that stone. The weight is how far the stone is going to travel. In English-speaking countries, you talk about the weight of the stone. If a stone is running a bit heavy or running a bit light, that means it's travelling a bit too fast or a bit too slow. And in German, interestingly, you talk about the length of the stone. If the stone's travelling too long or too short, which potentially makes a bit more sense. That Korean stone just over-curling slightly, but catching the Norwegian stone and bouncing back in towards the centre. Jostein Stordal coming down for his final stone in this first end, and not an easy one. There's not too much space really for him to play the hit and roll here. That sounds like what they're looking for. But first things first, he needs to make that Korean stone go away.
Yeah.
Lovely smooth delivery from Jostein Stordal. I think he certainly kept away from the guard. It's curling now. That's really nice stuff from him. You could see the danger of that, well, not quite a guard, but the red in the front ring. You could see the danger of that as that Norwegian stone was curling towards it. That's what made that stone particularly difficult. There we are. It's always curling towards that red. He had to be very careful to get the line just right. Curling enough to remove that red stone in the centre, but not enough to catch the red stone in the front ring. But this is well played by Korea. That really nice stone from Jang Jae-hook that went in behind the guard. That's the one that set up this opportunity to score 2 points in this first end for Korea. Go Seong-nam's final stone then in first end. It's curling pretty nicely, just like the Norwegian stone. He's made it perfectly. Superb shot from Go Seong-nam. Super shot for him, and great start for Korea. That's a big 2 on the board already in the first end. Here we see that again. He could not have placed that any better. They're just sneaking around that red at the top of the screen there in the front ring. And that's a great start for Korea. A big score of 2 in the first end. Korea lead Norway 2-0. And there we are after one end. Nice strong start for Korea. Big score of 2 there in that first end. Korea lead Norway 2-0.
아웃만 잡아줘도 될 것 같아. 이렇게 와서 이렇게 친절하게.
Ready to throw is Baek Hae-jin. Vice skip for Korea and flag bearer for the Korean Paralympic Winter Games team. Super start for Korea in that first end. There is a big difference between scoring 1 point if you have that last stone advantage and scoring 2 or more points if you have the last stone advantage. And here's why. So if you imagine there, the nice stone there from Baek Beijing. And you can imagine if Norway would simply just remove that stone and then Korea puts another one, Norway removes it, etc. Then Norway, with last stone advantage in the second end, they would end up scoring 1 point. And then last stone would go back to Korea. And if we imagine doing the same again, then Korea would end up with 1 point. So if you do that for 8 ends, then you would end up with a score of 4 each. So if you want to win the game, you have to mix it up a bit. You need to try to score more than 1 point if you have the last stone. So yeah, if we just continued like this, even though that was a very nice stone from Cecil Luchen, if we just continued like this, then Norway are only giving themselves a chance to score 1 point. Whereas Korea, in that first end, they were very brave, they were courageous. They had a couple of chances to get a mistake out of Norway, and they did. And the way to score more than 1 point, if you have the last stone, is to get a mistake from your opposition. If your opposition doesn't make a mistake, if they play 8 out of 8 good stones, then the most you can ever score is 1. So the idea is to make it difficult for your opposition, and then if your opposition makes a mistake, then you may have a chance to score more than 1. And that's exactly what we saw from Korea in that first end. There was the Norwegian guard out front. Korea sunk a stone buried in behind that. Norway didn't manage to remove that stone. And then Korea played the rest of the end out to score a nice big 2. And that could be very important later on. And that's why you'll often hear curlers talking about scoring 2 or more points when they have last stone, rather than only 1. 1 being somewhat the default. But a score of 1 very much on the cards for the second end at the moment. But it's early days yet. Norway they're only 2 behind. We're only in the second end. Norway don't have to be all out aggressive at the moment. There's plenty of ends left. We're going to play 8 ends. Extra ends if needed, if the score is tied at the conclusion. Korea also very well represented in the wheelchair curling discipline at Paralympic Winter Games. Wheelchair curling introduced in 2006 at the Torino Winter Games. And Korea represented by a few different teams. Meanwhile, there's the coach and the alternate for Korea. Coach is Kim Seong-min. Alternate is Yoon Eun-gu. That's a nice close-up of the delivery stick. We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Back when wheelchair curling was first starting up, and before we had delivery sticks, then the wheelchair curlers would simply lean an arm over the chair and throw by hand. But technology constantly moving on, and now we see the delivery stick typically. So there's the Norwegian coach, that's Peter Dahlman. He's actually from Sweden, and their alternate is Mia Sveberg. She's one of the youngest athletes here in Beijing for the Paralympic Winter Games. She's 23.
여긴 좀 떨어져. 조금 더 해야 돼, 오빠.
And this time we're seeing
조금만 더 벌려줘.
a reverse of the situation we saw in the first end. So this time it's a Korean stone that's out front, and it's Norway who have sunk a beautiful stone all the way around the back, completely hidden from Korea. Korea have the wheels of their chairs beautifully decorated with their team colours. But apart from that, there's nothing special about the wheelchairs that the athletes are using out there. You certainly don't need to have a wheelchair for sport or so. You don't need a particular design of wheelchair for wheelchair curling. All of these athletes, this is their day-to-day wheelchair. There's nothing to stop you having a special wheelchair for sport if you would want. But I think any advantage is not particularly outweighed by the cost. So if you're a wheelchair user yourself, or if maybe you're a curler and one of your friends is a wheelchair user and would like to try, then you don't need any special equipment. You are fine as you are. The curling club would have the stick for delivery. And while at this level, we do play separately, so the men's and ladies, they play separately from the wheelchair teams. And we'll get back to that, why that makes sense at this level. But at the club level, everyone plays together. So even if you're the only one who's a wheelchair user at your club, don't be shy.
아니 이쪽으로 들어야지.
At club level, everyone can play together. You'll see how accurate these guys
아니
are.
붙여야지.
And certainly at the club level,
어?
하려면 이쪽으로 해야 하는데.
아 10%.
the differences between wheelchair delivery and non-wheelchair delivery
아니 왜요? 우리 성공.
at club level are not that big, and everyone can play together. So even if you're the only wheelchair user, or you don't know any other wheelie users who are sporty and would maybe like to try curling, don't let that put you off. Don't be shy. You can go to the curling club whether you're a wheelchair user or not. And sometimes, or there are some people who use a stick for delivery that are not wheelchair users but maybe have more limited mobility in their legs or their knees, and that's an option as well. So curling really very inclusive. At the club level, everyone plays together, men and women, wheelchair, non-wheelchair, everybody really plays together. And that's a super shot there from third thrower Jang Jae-hyuk. He's really got his T-weight in his pocket. What is T-weight? That is a stone that will get roughly to the T-line. That is the line, the horizontal line, right underneath the feet of Jostein Stordal. There, that thin horizontal line right below Stordal's feet, that's the T-line. And a T-weight, that's a stone that will land pretty much exactly at that T-line. So that's a dangerous stone for Norway. See how nicely that's placed. Norway's problem. Norway's problem is if they approach that, if they try to play on that red stone just thrown by Korea, if Norway tries to play on that stone with the anti-clockwise handle, there is a high risk that the Korean stone will just squirt backwards onto the Norwegian stone, because they can't come on the clockwise handle because there's a guard in the way. And that's why that's such a really nice stone from Korea. So Norway having to think a little bit more creatively. Ole Fredrik Siversen, her first stone of the second end. Now this is coming in hot by the look of it. He's got a bit of a lucky result though. He has a bit of a shake of the head. Yeah, that wasn't quite what he was meaning. But he caught a couple of nice angles, and there you can see he's blocked access to that red stone for Korea. But nevertheless, if you're a Korea fan, this end is... This end's still going pretty nicely for Korea. Second stone from third thrower Jang Jae-hyuk. Yeah, if you're a Korea fan, this is still quite a nice end for you. Well, that stone is just going to slip on a little bit too long. The reason that Korea are in a nice spot here, even though that yellow's the closest, the yellow just in the red circle, the forefoot, that yellow's the closest, but quite difficult for Norway to get a second stone in to beat that Korean red stone. And as we just discussed, scoring 1 point when you have one last stone, that's not going to win you games. You really need to score more than 1 point when you have last stone. You need to get a few mistakes out of your opposition, and that's what Norway's pondering right now. Easy for Norway to score 1 point at the moment. That yellow is nice and safe in behind all those other stones. But Norway pondering, how can we get more than one here? So, Ole Fredrik Sivertsen coming up for a discussion.
Prøve å komme seg rundt, og så bare dult litt den røde litt til sides. Og så rulle ned på kanten og røde der.
Jeg kan prøve 12 hvis du vil.
Ja, prøve 12.
Det er samme fart du hadde nå.
Ja. Prøve han 12.
So decision's been made.
Prøve 12 fart. 12 fart. Ja, samme fart som jeg hadde i stad. Ja.
There you can see the busy traffic in front of the T line, the horizontal line. Busy traffic there. Difficult for Norway to get a second stone hidden in behind all those other stones. But we have seen a few stones curl quite a lot at the end on this anti-clockwise handle. Norway thinking that there's still a way in there. This one's coming in hot as well. Although that's nice though, but that could be what they called originally, to play on that. My Norwegian's not very good, I'm afraid, but that's a nice shot as well, to just play on that yellow that was in front. Just have a couple more yellows hanging around there. Now you see, if you can ever just squirt that red that's right in the middle, if you could ever just squirt that out the side there or out the back, then all of a sudden you might have 4 Norwegian yellows lying around. And that's why that was, again, a nice shot from Norway. You don't have to be lying shot, or you don't have to be the best shot after every stone. The teams are always thinking things through until the conclusion of the end, until all 8 stones have been played. And that's why you'll hear sometimes curling described a little bit like chess on ice, because the teams will be saying, okay, if we do this, then they will try that, then we will do this, and so on. And they will really be working mentally through all the possibilities until the conclusion of all 8 stones. So the danger with opening up that red is that Korea could punch it back a little bit. That stone just coming up a bit short, but it's found a very nice angle. Again, if Norway would attack that red stone just thrown, then we'll go red onto red, and again that will just squirt straight back onto yellow. So that's why, yep, big smile from Go Seong-nam, quite right. No easy shot out there for Norway. If you're a Korean fan and you're wondering why Korea don't start attacking that yellow that's right in the middle, that's been there most of the end, the answer is they don't need to. As we said, if you're only scoring 1 point ever with your one last stone, that doesn't win you games. So, if Korea can limit Norway to scoring only 1 point with their one last stone, they will have a score of 2 points to 1, and they will have last stone advantage back in the third end. So this end's going really nicely for Korea. That could be a slightly counterintuitive tactic to understand in curling, but very often a score of -1, i.e. giving your opponent 1 point, very often that's actually a good score for your team, and that's exactly what Korea has out there just now. A score of -1 for Korea, i.e. 1 point to Norway. That's fine for Korea. So that's a slightly counterintuitive tactic, but typically a very, very useful one. And yeah, Norway are not very happy with that. That shot doesn't really help them. And in fact, yeah, as Baek Hyejin, as she's indicating, Korea could potentially play a similar shot as they just threw with Go Seong-nam's first stone. And because that stone from Norway is really quite far from the rings, there's still plenty of space behind it to curl around and access those 2 red stones. So Korea looking handy in this end. It's got a bit to curl yet. It's catching the curl now, but I think this is going to come up a bit short. It is. You can see that had a nice line. It was going in the right direction there. But that's found a decent spot. That's blocked that way in for Norway. Just 1 stone to come.
Ja, hvor lander han? Husker du hvor lander han? Den var litt hardere da. Nei, det holder med innleggsfart. Ta litt mer da. For å komme på utsiden, ja.
Yeah, no easy stones for Norway here. As we said, they'll not be very pleased with only picking up 1 point. That stone right in the middle, in the red circle, the 4-foot. That stone's been there most of the end.
Ja.
Oh.
Det er vanlig innleggsfart som...
Ja.
But Norway, they would be wanting to pick up more than that 1 point with last stone. But no easy options here for fourth thrower and skip, Jostein Stordal.
Ja.
I think they were wanting to try to bump this stone in. Oh my goodness, he's got it. Look at that for a shot. A big shout of yaw from the Norwegians, and quite right too. Very difficult shot there from Jostein Stordal. And almost from nothing, Norway does manage to grab 2 points straight back in the second end, bringing the score 2 shots each.
아, 근데 여기도 공간이 있잖아.
So a super final stone from Norway there, picking up a big 2 in that second end. The numbers pretty similar, and that reflected in the score. Good shots from both teams already, and after 2 ends, the score is 2 shots each. Cecil Loken then setting us off in this third end. With her unique delivery, she uses both hands on the delivery stick. And as you can see, it works pretty well for her. The stone sitting nicely on the centre. That's nice there. They maybe would have wanted that stone in the rings, but this is a good plan B. At this point in the game and at this point in the end, a stone is better a little bit shorter from the rings rather than running too high and maybe going to the back of the rings or even all the way through. But at least one of these Norwegians in this constellation has represented Norway at every single Paralympic Winter Games in the wheelchair curling discipline since its inception in 2006. So 4 of the winningest curlers from Norway out on the ice just now. It's a relatively new constellation. Jostein Stordal, he has played the past 3 Paralympic Winter Games for Norway as well, but this is his first one playing at skip. But what a pedigree Norway has at curling in these Paralympic Winter Games. They finished 4th in the first competition in 2006. They finished 9th in 2010, 8th in 2014, and last time in Pyeongchang in 2018, they won the silver medal. So bags of experience for Norway. They'll be definitely one of the favourite teams on paper. High expectations for the Norwegian team out here, and I'm sure they would love to go one better this week. And in this past Olympic cycle, they've been doing very, very consistently at World Wheelchair Curling Championships as well. They were 4th in 2019 with the previous skip of the Norwegian team, and they just lost the bronze medal match, oddly enough, to Korea, but a different constellation for Korea, a slightly different team. They were 4th in the 2020 Worlds. They were beaten in the quarter-final, and they were 7th in the 2021 Worlds. So just a model of consistency, this Norwegian team. They are always strong. They are always hard to beat. They have so much experience between them. And Korea, as a curling nation, they have plenty of experience and plenty of good results in wheelchair curling as well. Geir-Arne Skogstad's draw, just catching that guard there. Lovely weight. It's landed in exactly the right spot. It just overcurled a little. But Korea also have strong pedigree in wheelchair curling. They've had a few different teams representing, and this is quite a new team for Korea. They finished 9th in the Worlds in 2021 last year. And that is not trivial. It's very difficult to maintain your place in the A group in World Wheelchair Championships. And to finish 9th on their debut, this team, that's very impressive. And different team from Korea, they finished 6th in 2020. And that same team in 2019, they won the bronze medal in the World Championships. And those nice, steady, good results cumulatively, that qualified Korea for the Paralympic Winter Games here in Beijing. That's how all the teams qualify, except for the host country. And in this case, that's China, but actually they had more points than everyone else as well, so they didn't even need to qualify as hosts. And golly, what a nice shot from Geir-Arne Skogstad. I think this Norwegian team could take a bit of beating. They've just been getting better and better the past few years. And look at that, he not only removes the Korean stone, a big punch in the air, I'm not surprised. And look at that, he got the roll all the way behind those guards out front. And Korea with last stone, if they want to score anything, they're going to have to start clearing a bit of space here. Korea finished 4th in the round, they finished 1st in the round robin at Paralympics in 2018 with a different team. But they ended up finally 4th in the bronze medal match, but that's a happy result there for Jung Sung-hun. Let's watch that again. I think the idea was simply to clear the guards, but he's got a bit of a bonus there, hasn't he? And just picked off that stone of Norway that was right in the centre. And this can happen in curling when you've got plenty of stones in play. This happens really quite often, that particularly at the club level, that just stones can catch a slightly different angle, spin themselves off in a slightly different direction. That's part of the game. And good for Norway. They don't let that put them off, just having a little bit of bad luck against them. They don't let that put them off. They just stick to their game. All of them seem to have T weight in their pocket. That's the stone landing just around on the T line, that horizontal line. Ole Fredrik Siversen continuing to put pressure on this new Korean team. A different Korean team, they won silver medal in the 2010 Paralympic Winter Games. So a lot of strength and depth in Korean wheelchair curling. And this third end then of our featured game today. This is day 2 of the wheelchair curling competition at Paralympic Winter Games in Beijing. Korea with last stone in the third end. But it's really Norway in control at the moment of this third end. They have the stone right in the centre. And a couple of stones out front guarding that shot as well. Norway won their first 2 games. And Korea still looking for a first win. And that's nice again from Norway. Good separation on those stones. The closer stones are together, the easier it can be to remove both of them together with a double takeout. And those Norwegian stones really nicely lined up. Korea still got a lot of work to do to make themselves a space to try to score anything at the moment in this third end. That's their best idea, is to drive that red backwards and try to jam that red backwards onto the yellow that's already in the centre. Young Song-hun holding the wheels for Jang Jae-hyuk. Make sure he's nice and stable with good balance. And this is not bad. Pop, look at that. Absolutely beats it, and nice shot, the Norwegians say. Curling is a very gentlemanly game. Look at that, that's just perfect. He could not have gone up there and placed that stone any more nicely. Jang Jae-hyuk having a superb game out there so far. Setting up the ends beautifully for Korea. So Norway will maybe be a little bit frustrated that Korea found a way to the centre there, but this is another one of those situations where a score of -1 for Norway, i.e. a score of 1 point to Korea, it's fine. It's Korea that has last stone. It's Korea who want to try to score more than 1. If you only ever score 1 with last stone, you're not going to win the game. So if Norway can simply limit Korea to only scoring 1, that's good enough. Even better it would be if Norway could steal a point. That means Norway would score even though they don't have last stone. And they were looking good to do that until that super shot from Jang Jae-hyuk. That's a good shot from Jostein Stordal. He doesn't need to beat that red stone. He doesn't even really need to move that red stone. If Norway's objective is simply to limit Korea, They just want to make it hard for Korea to try to score 2 points. They don't mind if Korea scores 1. And that's exactly what that stone's done. It's made it harder for Korea to score 2. Korea are going to have to take wider ice now. You can see the brush further towards the side of the sheet there, on the wings of the sheet, as we say. And tougher now for Korea to get to the centre of the ice.
화이팅, 화이팅.
Seong-nam, the left-hander, with his first shot in the third end. Now, they may have said to themselves this needs to be going a little bit quicker. He needs to push it a little bit harder because the ice was a bit wider, or they may have thrown it very similarly to before, and that can often happen. We don't play so many stones very wide, with the brush very wide like that. We play most of our stones towards the middle of the ice. And that can happen if you need to take a wider path. Sometimes the ice is still a little bit colder, maybe a little bit frostier. And that can make the stone go a little bit slower. There's more friction out there. And that's exactly what it looks like happened to that first stone from Go Seong-nam. One stone left for each team in the third end of our featured game. We're watching Korea play Norway. We play 8 ends in wheelchair curling. And each team has 38 minutes thinking time and one minute timeout if they want. Last stone for Norway in the third end. Norway's objective in this third end, limit Korea to scoring. They're not too worried about that Korean stone right in the centre. They don't mind giving up 1 point only. But they don't want to give up any more. So that's certainly somewhat blocked access on the counter-clockwise handle, the anti-clockwise. But definitely space here on the clockwise handle for Go Seong-nam to get in the second point there. That's a nice angle. He'll need to be wary though. He will remember that his first stone, also on that very wide path on the other handle, the anti-clockwise handle, he will remember that that came up a little bit shorter. And this needs to find the 8-foot circle, the white one. And of course, the most obvious difference between wheelchair curling and non is that there are no sweepers. This looks really nice though. This looks super. What a shot from Go Seong-nam. Golly, what a lot of points in 3 ends we have seen already. That's another big score of 2 to Korea. Both teams being super efficient with the last stone at the moment. That makes the score 4 shots to 2. Korea leading Norway.
오빠 미안.
There's our overall game statistics. Norway outshooting Korea by a few points there. A little bit more accurate with their stones, but Korea making some really clutch shots. And reflected in the score at the moment, Korea making good use of last stone advantage. They lead Norway 4 shots to 2. Korean team flag bearer as well as lead thrower Baek Hae-jin
왜 튀기지?
네. 아,
will
1번
start us
이상한
off in this fourth end.
빠지는 것 같은데. 내가
We play 8 ends of wheelchair curling, so at the conclusion of this fourth end, there will be a half-time pause.
3.8.
And this looks pretty nice from Baek. Very nice stone indeed.
3.8인데도 안 나가.
And with that stone as well as that lovely final stone from Go Seong-nam there in the third end. You can see how much more difficult these shots are if you're a wheelchair curler rather than non. When you have nobody sweeping your stones. That's the most obvious and probably the biggest difference between wheelchair curling and non, is that once that stone's on its way, it has to be perfect because your sweepers cannot pull it along a little further if the stone's running a bit shorter, and they can't influence the direction either. So if you were watching the men's and ladies events in the Olympics a couple of weeks ago, you can see how often they are sweeping, either to drag the stone a bit further along the ice or to try to control the direction, to try to either curl, to try to keep it a bit straighter, or once the stone's caught a bit of a curl, to try to keep the stone curling in that direction. So every stone really in wheelchair curling is just a higher level of difficulty than the non-wheelchair counterparts. That's a nice setup from Baek Hae-jin for Korea. Our other flag bearer who's out in the ice today, that's Sissel Leuchen for Norway, lining up her second stone in this fourth end. So brakes on, and Ole Fredrik Siversen holding the wheels for stability. And Sissel with that unique delivery, central delivery.
Träffen. Ja.
That's a good shot from her.
Det var greit, det.
That's really nice from Sissel Leuchen. If you're wondering why that's a good shot, if you're a Norway fan and you think it doesn't look that great, it's curling away from the centre of the ice and it's not in the rings. The reason that is a good shot is because that stone is currently protected by free guard zone. The free guard zone is all of the white area in front of the rings and up to the hog line, that thick red horizontal line. And Korea not allowed to remove any stones. Neither team allowed to remove opposition stones from the free guard zone until we have played 5 shots. So that's both the stones, in fact, from Sissel Leuchen in the free guard zone. There's her first stone there, and there's her second stone on the left, and both of those protected by free guard zone. But gosh, Korea putting all sorts of pressure on Norway here in this fourth end. 1, 2, 3 stones lined up on the centre line. But the good news for Norway is that free guard zone is finished. We've played 5 stones, and now you can indeed remove opposition stones from play, and that's exactly what skip Jostein Stordal is asking for.
Har rett inn.
Oi, gå inn. Det var såpass, ja.
That's overcurled slightly.
Nille 5.
That's an unlucky result for Norway, because you'll see what he's done is he didn't remove that Korean guard that they were aiming for, and unfortunately he accidentally managed to catch both of the guards that Sissel Leuchen had thrown.
롤 보는 건 어때?
없애자고?
아니 스테이도 괜찮아. 수공돌 먼저
우리 앞에만
치워야지.
서 있어도 상관없어.
아니 하우스에서 수공돌 있는 거 다 치우라고 했잖아.
한번 하고 그다음에 좀 되게
not sure what Korea are discussing. There is one very obvious shot to play, and it's this one. It's Norway who have last stone in this fourth end.
sorry.
And Korea with that
되지 않아? 4번인데?
super score of 2 in the third end.
바깥에 지금 12로 보고 있어.
Again, Korea doesn't need to take risks. They just want to keep Norway limited. Don't give Norway a chance to score more than 1 point with last stone. They're beautifully set up in the centre already, so really the only sensible thing to do is to go ahead and remove this Norwegian stone. And he does that just nicely.
Samme. Nille. Og 9-5 den forrige.
Ja.
Norway with some work to do then. They're under a bit of pressure in this fourth end from Korea.
Ja.
He's got it this time, and he's also managed to catch that that stone that was in the front ring of the house. So that's already looking a lot better from Norway's perspective. But Korea will still be quite happy with how things are going from their end. That red played right at the start of the end. Still causing problems for Norway. And another opportunity here for Korea to get a guard in front of that. Try to block the path to that red stone for Norway. Jae-hyuk having a great game out there so far.
왜 안 가냐?
웨이트.
어이씨. 쏘리 가드야.
아니야, 가득이 돼도
아니,
괜찮은데
괜찮아.
잘 쓰기만 하면 5초 9. 잘 썼어요,
So
가득.
that's thrown quite far from the house. We would say that's quite a long guard. It's a long way from the house, but look at the line. He's right in front of that red. That's exactly what they wanted. And that's a nice shot from him again.
Ja. Nille. Ja.
Important is that Korea are still keeping Norway busy. In the centre, removing guards, not allowing Norway to get their own stones in and get their own stones set up to score points. That's nicely done though from Ole Fredrik Siversen.
Han har vært ille, så hadde det blitt bra, tror jeg. Men han åpna.
가득 좀 살짝 묻어도
Norway keeping the path open, but Korea playing very nicely to block it up again. And I'm sure that's what we'll see Jung Jae-hyuk attempting again. Having a very, very consistent game out there just now.
웨이트.
You can see as we have a nice view of the wheelchair curlers' deliveries, we can see another key difference between wheelchair play and non-wheelchair play.
나쁘지 않아.
That's another super shot from him. Of course, he's really up for it in this game. But another key difference is that the wheelchair players, of course, are using only upper body strength. So in the non-wheelchair game, we come pushing out the hack. The hack's a little black rubber grip on the ice where you put your non-sliding foot, and we come driving out. You call it the leg drive. We come driving out, and all the power for a non-wheelchair curler should come from that big leg drive. All the power is coming from your legs. And for the wheelchair curlers, all the power is coming from upper body. To throw a big weight, a big takeout, to do that consistently again and again using only the upper body strength, that's also much tougher than getting that power from the leg drive. But that's a lovely stone there from Ole Fredrik Siversen. He's picked off the Korean counter. He doesn't look too happy with it, but I think this worked out pretty nicely. He does move that guard, and he picks off the stone that was in the centre. So nothing in the house now. 4 stones to come.
13.
Norway with last stone in this fourth end before we go to half-time.
될 것 같은데. 화이팅.
Go Seong having the most accurate game out there at the moment, although everybody playing pretty well. We've seen a lot of good stones from both teams. And you can see that Go has his non-throwing arm holding onto a kind of balance handle there. And a lot of the players, they do have their chair adapted for that. But you don't have to, especially not when you're learning. That's another nice effort from Go Seong-nam. I'm not sure if it got all the way in behind that guard, but again, important is that Norway not being allowed to get stones into the house. As long as Korea are constantly putting pressure on Norway, remember, they don't mind if Norway scored just 1 point. Scoring 1 point with your one last stone, that's not going to win you games. And that's Korea's objective here, is to just limit Norway. Korea don't need to score in this end. They just want to stop Norway scoring.
Okay.
Ser det greit ut, synes du?
Ja.
10 blank.
10 blank.
Jostein Stordal not far behind Go Seong-nam. Having a pretty handy game himself out there, and he will be looking to just remove that counter from Korea. But look, the guard's done its job. Even though that guard was quite a long way out from the rings, did its job. It tempted Norway into that mistake. And now Korea have a really good chance to put some pressure on Norway just before half-time.
똑같이 할까?
그거 있는 대로 들어가는 게 좋을 것 같아. 이쪽 도로 놓거든. 이쪽으로. 이쪽도 이쪽 도로 밖에 없거든. 이렇게 하면 되잖아요. 아 그러니까 빨간색 도로는 앞으로 들어가.
Korea will be discussing either they could play on that Korean shot already there, just bump it back a little bit,
프리즈 좋아.
한 대로. 예.
or they could draw directly. And this is a wise choice to play onto that stone they already have. In non-wheelchair curling, you would probably see the team ignore that stone and just draw around the one remaining guard. But because of the reasons we've spoken about already, just those key differences between wheelchair curling and non, I think this is what we would call the percentage shot for the wheelchair curlers. I think this is an easier shot for the wheelchair delivery, is to just use that stone that's already in the house. So there we see, that's exactly what they wanted. It's just going to bump it back a little bit. Lovely stone again from Korea. And no possibility for Norway to score 2 points here. And could be a little bit difficult. Yeah, it looks like, again, with the non-wheelchair players, you might see them trying to play a double takeout and have a blank end, score 0, because they would say, no, we've got last stone, we can only make 1 point. Let's blank the end, hold on to last stone, and then we'll try again to make more than 1 point after half time. But that's not an easy double takeout. As we said, if you don't have sweepers, then level of difficulty for every shot is increased, and especially when you really need perfect angles, and level of difficulty to throw a big weight, which you need for a double takeout, also harder when you're using upper body strength instead of leg drive. Last stone before half-time for Jostein Stordal from Norway. He needs to hit that Korean counter and stick around himself. This looks pretty nice. Oh no, that just over curled. Oh, look at that.
One red.
One red it is. That's a steal for Korea. They have stolen a point, scored without last stone. Bit of frustration there for Norway. And that's made quite a difference now after 4 ends. Korea, they are leading Norway 5 shots to 2. Our local fans happily cheering for the Chinese team, who are also playing. Oh, there's little Shui Ronron with her little human friend. The two of them enjoying themselves. So really nice numbers, particularly look at those numbers for the back end of Korea there. Jang Jae-hyuk and Go Seung-nam for Korea. Superb throwing out there today. And I'm sure there will be lots of positivity at halftime. Let's see what their coach has to offer.
성훈이 형 것도 버퍼 잡았는데.
야, 아까 그리고 3점 놓쳤어. 3점. 우리가 이쪽으로 들어갔어야 돼. 첫차. 어? 이렇게 들어가면 안 됐어. 첫샷이 이렇게.
아까 이렇게 있었잖아요. 아까 인편 쪽에.
And the numbers for Norway, not terrible at all. We've seen plenty of good stuff from Norway as well. Just the Koreans really having a superb first half there. Not panic stations at all for Norway. They're doing a lot of good stuff out there. They've just had a couple of critical misses. So let's see what their coach has to offer to encourage them at half-time.
Vi är så nära i omgång efter omgång. Vi ligger och styr många omgångar då. Så de hade ju den ena doen de tog där. Det var ju en clearing. De skulle ju inte på den runbacken som de fick den dubbelgula. Så vi ligger på förkant.
There's our overall summary. Numbers very similar as we saw, but Korea just placing their stones really nicely, especially in that fourth end there, just getting a couple of mistakes from Norway. And the result is they have a big 3-point cushion. They lead Norway 5 points to 2 at half-time.
이렇게 하니까 이런 거 치다가 실수하잖아. 네. 롤아웃보다는 스테이. 좀 더 정확성 좀만 올려주면 점수 우리 후반인데 오인데 항상 약한 거예요.
Men det dra på litt tid først, nei.
Ja. Er du enig, Ståle? Er du enig?
1 minute.
Thank you. Hva tenker du?
There's Shui Ronron, our mascot. Oh, having a nice hug from her human friend there, her human mummy. And gosh, we've got an exciting second half coming up. This is proving to be a really tasty lineup. Republic of Korea leading Norway 5 shots to 2. Korea lost their first 2 games. Not by much, they had close games, but Norway won their first 2, so this turning into a real tasty encounter out there. bags of experience in this Norwegian team. First Paralympics for this particular Korean wheelchair curling team. But Korea having a lot of strength and depth in wheelchair curling. They've had several teams over the years. Very consistent country in terms of wheelchair curling performances. And I'm sure Korea will have been discussing how to keep that energy going in the second half. First stone in the fifth end then from Baek Hae-jin. Also the flag bearer for Korea in the opening ceremony for the whole Korean Paralympic Winter Games team. And that's a lovely start from her. That stone quite close to the rings, but still space to come around and get a stone close to the centre. Cecil Loken throwing great stuff out there. Yeah, as we said, the three-point cushion for Norway maybe doesn't quite reflect what we've been seeing, actually. Both teams have been playing an awful lot of nice stones out there. But just a couple of critical misses from Norway, really, has allowed Korea to grab a couple of critical points. That's, again, a nice shot from Cecil Loken. Remember, Norway, they have the last stone here in this fifth end. So they're happy that that stone, that's in the free guard zone, that white area ahead of the rings. Korea not allowed to remove that Norwegian stone from play until we play 5 stones. That's nice again from Baek Hae-jin. Perfect would have been a little bit closer to the centre, but that's a dangerous stone again. Korea could just punch that stone back a little bit further. Norwegian flag bearer Cecil Loken with her second stone in the fifth end. The only player in the field that has a central delivery. She uses both hands. Very consistent with that particular delivery of hers. And again, that's a nice shot from Norway there. That's 2 guards out now in the free guard zone. We've only played 4 stones. Korea not allowed to remove those Norwegian counters from play. And that's setting up the end nicely for Norway.
4번.
3번.
4번이 그거 아니야?
Classic setup for wheelchair delivery for Jung Sung-hong. Jae-hyuk holding onto the wheels behind him for stability and balance. And the third player at that end, Baek Hae-jin, she will be timing that stone. How long does it take to pass between the 2 hog lines, those 2 thick red horizontal lines? And that will give them information about the ice. Whether the ice is particularly fast, so you don't need to throw the stone very hard, or maybe the ice is a little bit slower than normal for this competition, so you need to throw the stone a little bit harder. And that's why you'll see all the players with their stopwatches. And of course, what you will also see in the teams is in wheelchair curling, it is a rule of wheelchair curling that the teams must be mixed. You must have at least 1 man and at least 1 woman in every wheelchair curling team. You can play in any order you like, as long as you have 1 man, 1 woman, and then the other folks in the team can be of either gender. So wheelchair curling really flying the flag for inclusivity. It's always a mixed team for wheelchair curling.
캡처럼 들어와줘, 승남아.
못 들었어.
이 4번을 그대로 던지면 보게 될 것 같아.
아까 나갔던 데가 저기야. 저기로 나가면 될 것 같아.
3초 정도 하면 될 것 같아.
Korea will be looking for a repeat, really, of the fourth end. Norway also had final stone, last stone advantage in the fourth end, but Korea managed to put enough pressure on it, and they did get a final mistake from Norway and picked up 1 point. They stole a point. They scored without last shot. And that's exactly what they'll want to set up again in this fifth end. This stone coming in chunky, I think. Is it going to put its brakes on? Not quite. I think that's just sailing through. We said a couple of ends ago that it can be a bit more difficult to play on that kind of path when the brush is quite wide. We play most of the stones towards the centre of the rings, towards the house. And when the brush is very wide like that, it can be that that's a less travelled path, literally. The path less travelled. And sometimes the ice can be a little bit slower, very wide out there, a little bit more frosty. And sometimes that can get into your head as, well, I need to push it a little bit harder. And then you overcook it a bit. So that could be what happened to that Korean stone. So a bit of a let-off for Norway. Norway won their first two games, but they are not having it all their own way out here at all. Oh, and that stone just overcurling slightly for them as well. Actually, working out okay for a plan B. I think they got quite a nice redirection, and now Korea no longer have access to that red stone just in front of Go Seong-nam. I don't think Korea have easy access to that stone anymore. They'll have to go through the yellow stone in front, or they may just want to remove that dangerous yellow right next to it. Jae-hyuk having a cracking game out there. And it looks like they are just wanting to remove that dangerous Norwegian stone. Off it goes. And another pretty nice redirect, and now there are suddenly two Korean stones in the house. Traditionally, if you have the last stone, you rather keep the play away from the centre initially. You rather keep the play towards the edges, towards the wings of the sheet. That's to try to avoid your opposition clustering up the space in the centre. But Norway wise here to switch up the tactic. There are those stones out front, and there's a couple of Korean stones now at the side. So Norway wise to say, okay, let's just try to get to the centre first, and I think you might get another nice redirect here. He certainly does. A little happy chuckle from the Norwegian third, Ole Fredrik Siversen. To be honest, that's the kind of shot that I might apologise to my opposition, say, oh, sorry about that, we didn't really mean to get that redirect. But the weight was exactly what he wanted, and if you play the correct weight, then typically you can often come up with a good plan B if you don't get it perfectly. Korea then just having to follow that stone. No stone for them to redirect off. They're going to have to get it directly. And this stone got a bit to curl yet. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. It is going to get quite a nice redirect. And that's a nice shot for Korea. If you remember, viewers, we were talking about how oftentimes -1 is a good result. That's exactly what Korea would be happy with in this end. They're not worried about that Norwegian stone right in the middle. They don't need to take risks to try and remove it. They just want to try and make sure Norway can't score any more than that 1 point. If Norway can only score 1, that would make the score 5 shots to 3, and Korea would again have last stone. So that's fine for them. They don't need to worry about removing that Norwegian stone. They're just going to ignore that and just keep trying blocking that path. Make sure Norway cannot get more than that 1 point. What do you think, viewers? I think that's still a yellow stone. You can see the yellow just on the right side of that centre line. I believe I can see the hole in the centre of the rings, just to the left side of that yellow stone. So I think that's still one yellow stone, but of course Norway making their own lives awfully difficult right now. That stone under curling a bit for Ole Fredrik Siversen. And of course giving themselves a bit of a headache there now, Norway, because what Korea are going to do is just now block that path completely. And you can see it's appropriately a Great Wall of China approach out there. Loads of stones out front. Very difficult to get to the centre for either team now. And that suits Korea fine. Current MVP out on the ice just now, Go Seong-nam, with his first shot at the fifth end. So he doesn't want this stone to be too heavy. He doesn't want it to travel too far. That's exactly where he wants it there. Now that whole anti-clockwise side of the sheet, completely blocked. No way, well, no easy way in for Norway through all of those stones out front and in the front rings there. So Norway with a bit of a headache to score more than 1 point at this fifth end.
Sett opp, så skal vi se når det kommer opp.
Tappe den.
Ja.
Shui Ron and her human mummy having a lovely time out there by the look of it. Both enjoying their curling this evening.
To blank.
Now we saw Jostein Stordal make a very similar shot with his last stone in the second end. And slightly lower numbers during this game for Jostein Stordal, but that really reflects again the difficulty of shots he's having to go for. Korea putting him under a lot of pressure, particularly in the past 2 or 3 ends. So the degree of difficulty already higher for wheelchair throwers. The degree of difficulty is higher again for Stordal. And golly, he's not made his life any easier with that stone. He has further blocked up the clockwise handle now.
좀만 줄일게.
Of course, look at all that.
탭 한 번 했으면 탭 좀 막아버렸네. 파이팅.
또 탭하지 않을까 누나?
근데 이거 다이렉트로 보이지 않아?
세게 나가니까.
이거 정타 맞으면은
오케이.
Final stone for Korea in the fifth end of the session 5 encounter in the round robin at the Paralympic Winter Games in Beijing. And I think that's just what Korea were looking for. I think that what Korea will have asked themselves with that stone is, okay, what's the most obvious shot that Norway would like to play? And it looks like they were thinking Norway might like to drive back that yellow that's just half in the blue, half in the white. Maybe Norway could have gone to drive that stone back and pick off that red. So that's a really nice stone again from Go Seong-nam. And Norway definitely lying short already, lying 1 point, but very hard for them to pick up 2. But as we said, we saw Jostein Stordal make a very similar shot in the second end, and he will want to replicate that right now, please.
Yellow.
Oh, it looks like he had good weight, but that stone just over curling a bit. 1 yellow it is, the teams agree. And again, we see how difficult such a shot is. particularly finding those angles when the stones are wide like that without your sweepers. Tricky stuff if you don't have someone to sweep your stone all the way to try to hold that line. But that steadied the ship a bit for Norway. Got 1 point safely on the board. And that makes the overall score Korea 5, Norway 3. Overall game summary then. We can see Korea just starting to edge away a little bit from Norway. Their numbers really super for this game. Korea looking for their first win, and Korea still leading Norway by 5 shots to 3.
Yep.
Last stone then is back with Korea in the 6th end. And now we will see the tactics completely reversing. It will be Norway who wants to play stones towards the centre, try and block the path to the centre for Korea. They would love to steal a point, so score a point here, Norway themselves, and that has just stopped short of the rings. That is protected by free guard zone, and that's a lovely shot from Cecil Lucan. That's exactly what they needed, Norway.
아웃던 들어오야지. 다들 우리가 이용해. 저거 상대가 실수한 거잖아. 일본이야.
So for the first time in a couple of ends, Korea have last stone.
우리 2업인 거 알고 있죠?
1번.
그러니까 우리가 2업. 5대 3 점수.
And sometimes you would see the teams playing away from the centre, as we said, so that they're not junking up the centre. Korea were trying to use that yellow guard from Norway and come in behind it. Korea are already plus 2 points. And we're in the 6th end now. We're getting towards the conclusion of this game. So even if Korea just score 1 point here, that's actually okay. Normally, you would like to score more than 1 point with your last stone, but since Korea have already done that, they not only scored 2 points a couple of times with their last stone, but they also stole a point as well. They scored when they didn't have last stone. That means that that's given them that comfortable cushion of 2 points. And so they don't need to take so many risks in this end. They've worked hard to get a cushion of 2 points, and if they only score 1 point, that's not a disaster. So they don't need to take big risks. They don't need to play too aggressively in the 6th end. And that's why we don't see Korea throwing up corner guards, guarding the corners of the ice. We don't see them playing away from the centre because they don't need to. So a bit more beans on this from Baek Haejin. Ooh, it just touches that Norwegian stone, but makes it to the front ring. That's a dangerous shot in that front ring there. And don't be frustrated if you're a Norway fan. Don't be frustrated that Norway are ignoring that Korean stone. Yes, they could remove it. That stone is not protected by free guard zone because it's touching the rings, it's in the house. But don't be frustrated that Norway are not removing it. Norway needs stones in play. If Norway would just remove that stone, that's not helping Norway score another point, which is what ideally they would like to do in this 6th end. They would rather use that stone to maybe hide behind. But is this shot going to overcurl? Oh gosh, this stone's curling straight towards that red. It doesn't get in behind, but it does block access to that red for Korea. Removing most of the danger from that stone in the front ring for Korea. So yeah, that's, again, a good plan B.
후공이야.
알아.
그러니까 사이드 쪽에 되어 있는 건 좋잖아 우리한테.
상태는 어차피 이제 너무
The delivery stick, not only used by wheelchair curlers,
사이드 뒤쪽으로 가면 붙일까
also
봐
used by standing curlers or foot curlers. If you maybe have more reduced mobility in your knees or in your legs,
바깥으로 내가 바깥으로 좀.
there are non-wheelchair folks that use stick delivery as well. Curling really very inclusive for wheelchair and non-wheelchair, and even if you have more limited mobility, there is a curling option for you.
앞쪽이 좋다는 거 아니야?
티 뒤로 가면 이제 붙이려고 계속 할 거니까.
And even if you're the only wheelchair user in your gang or in your curling club, don't be shy. That's absolutely not a barrier. Curling's one of the nice sports where you don't need to find a specialist wheelchair curling club. They do exist for wheelchair-specific tournaments, but at the club level for social curling, even if you're the only wheelchair user, that's fine. Everybody can play together. The differences at this level are much less pronounced at club level.
Oh, good shot.
And gosh, could you imagine having someone like Jung Sung Hung on your team at the club? You'd be happy for his stones on your team for sure. So curling totally inclusive for everyone. You don't need a special wheelchair for sport. You don't need your own delivery stick. The club will have that. You don't even need to have flags on your wheels like the Korean team does. You can just show up as you are. The club will have a delivery stick. And you can go right ahead and join it. Norway, with such a pedigree in Paralympic Winter Games, and they're going to need all of that. And gosh, what a shot is that! That's a superb shot from Geir Arne Skogstad. He could not have hardly gone and placed that any better. That's superb stuff. That's exactly what Norway needed. There are a whole bunch of stones out front, and Norway managed to swing a stone behind everything and just sneak into that little space ahead of the Korean stone. That's a fantastic shot. That could really be important for the overall game, actually. Korea don't mind scoring only 1 point with their last stone, but they don't really want Norway to score 1 point. That would bring the score to 5-4. And of course, that's exactly what Norway want to do, and giving themselves a pretty nice chance with that super shot from Skogstad. And ooh, that was very close to being a perfect shot there from Korean second thrower Jung Sung Han. But that Norwegian counter hangs on. So advantage Norway in the sixth end.
Du prøver en til? Ja. Ville garde? Nei. Tre blank? Tre blank. Ja. Så dytter du den hjulen litt. Ja.
The third and final key difference with typical wheelchair delivery versus non-wheelie. This one's just running on a bit, but the final key difference between wheelchair delivery and non-wheelchair delivery is that, and this actually counts for all stick deliverers actually, whether you're a wheelchair or standing. If you're using the stick for delivery, you really get one push with the stick and then the stone is already on its way. Now, if you're not using wheelchair and you're using leg drive, so you're starting in the hack, that little rubber grippy part at the back, and you're driving out from that hack using leg drive in a traditional non-wheelchair delivery. And if you push out a little bit too fast or a little bit too slow, you have about 2 or 3 seconds before the hog line, that big thick red horizontal line, and then you have to let the stone go. So if you drive out, your leg drive's a little bit wrong, you still have a couple of seconds to try to fix it with an arm, whereas if you're using the stick for delivery, you have one push and that's it, so there's no adjustment possible. And that's the third key difference between wheelchair curling and non. So we have no sweeping. You're using only upper body strength instead of leg drive. And there's no adjustment possible on stick delivery. And all three of those things contribute to making really every stone in wheelchair curling is just a higher level of difficulty than in non-wheelchair curling. But a superb stone from Geir Arne Skogstad in the sixth end has given advantage to Norway here, and they will just be looking to block Korea's path. And they have. That's sat up really nicely for Norway. It's Korea who have last stone in this sixth end.
거의 80 보이는데.
There's a big screen behind them if you wonder why the players keep looking behind. There's a big screen which has the stone placements on it, the house and all the stones in it. That's why they'll occasionally turn around.
이쪽은 어때, 이쪽? 인턴 쪽은 어때?
Now, as we said, Korea don't really have to take risks in this end. They don't have to play all out aggressive, even if they just score 1 point in this end. That's fine. Korea are already plus 2 points, and we're getting to the conclusion of the game. But if Norway would score a point in this end, that would change things quite significantly compared with Korea scoring 1 point. So big deal who scores in this end. And at the moment it's Norway who are sitting. So that shot from Jang Jae-hyuk looks pretty fancy, but the summary result is that he really just removes that one guard. There's still a Norwegian stone sitting there. You can see the numbers at fourth thrower. Jostein Stordal, his number is a little bit lower than his first two games, but that very much reflective of the difficulty that Korea are putting him under. It's probably the least pressured shot he's faced for quite a few ends at least. That Norwegian counter nicely tucked in, not fully buried behind those red guards. And we will see Norway just adding in another guard there, I would think. Pretty much exactly there. That's very nice. Good stuff from Jostein Stordal. That's really blocked the path to the Norwegian stone for Korea.
하나 둘 정도 잡으면 되겠다 싶으면 노말 오브로 때리고.
누나 와서 한 번만 잡아줄래요?
와서 노란 노래.
Stordal really got his game face on there.
거기에 휘철 라인선 잡으면 될 것 같아요.
Very tough to beat Norway. And this game far from over. We're
많이 떨어질 텐데. 노말
at a
오브로
critical point in the sixth end out of 8.
거기 맞아야 될 때죠.
런백 하려고 그러는 거야? 너무 먼데?
This is the sensible shot, is to simply remove the guard that Jostein Stordal played. You can't see it, but it's right in front of Bayek of Korea. There it is, coming into view now. This is the right shot to play, because then
승남아 거의
Whatever Norway
정탈에서
plays with their last stone,
진짜 거의 정탈하고 생각하면 돼.
you will only ever be losing 1 point maximum. If Korea start messing around trying to go around that stone, trying to outcount Norway, they could end up facing 2 Norway counters and could even end up losing 2. So if you just remove this guard, then very unlikely that you will, well, your worst case should be that you would lose a maximum of 1 point to Norway, which not ideal for Korea, but not the end of the world. And that got a happy little bouncing that red in towards that yellow.
Yep.
But it doesn't help him too much. Again, important for Norway to simply block access to that whole path. You can see the yellow plot behind the players' heads. That's Norway's thinking time, just ticking down. Last stone for Norway in the 6th end. If your time clock does run to 0 and you don't have enough time left to play your game, you do forfeit the game, whether you're winning or losing. If you run out of time, you lose the game. And that's lovely stuff from Jostein Stordal. And yeah, there's really only one choice here for Korea. They simply have to draw better than the Norwegian stone. So this has to be so precise. This more or less has to touch the, what we would call the 1 foot circle. That's the little circle right in the middle that has the Paralympic logo on it. This would be an incredibly difficult shot if you do have people to sweep your stone. So there's a very difficult shot for Korea to try to outcount that Norwegian stone. He's not far off. Oh, great effort from Go Seong-nam. You can see how close he was. He passed through that Paralympic logo, but that stone just running on a little bit too much. Super effort, but that's a very important point for Norway. That makes a huge difference to the score. It's now Korea leading Norway 5 shots to 4. There's our overall game summary. We can see Norway's numbers a little bit higher, actually, than Korea. And indeed, Norway starting to grab back into this game. That's a very important point for them in the 6th end, making the overall score Korea leading 5 shots to 4 against Norway. Big difference then. That score of 1 point in the 6th end to Norway. Huge difference between Norway scoring a point, making the overall score 5-4 to Korea, rather than if Korea had scored 1 point in that 6th end, it would be 6-3 to Korea. So what a difference that makes. That stolen point from Norway in the 6th end. And they will be looking for more of the same, please, in the 7th end. Objective for Norway is ideally would be to steal another point here. That's why they've put, again, a guard in front in that free guard zone. Korea not allowed to remove that stone from play. from Norway's perspective, not the end of the world if Korea score 1 point here, but if Korea score any more than 1 point, Norway's task at the 8th end and final end will be very, very difficult. And Korea well aware of this. And have made a beautiful start. Really nice stuff from Baek Haejin. The only player that uses both hands on the stick for delivery. But more important than what you do is that you do it repeatedly and consistently, which she absolutely does. And throwing another very nice guard towards the centre line there. Now that maybe looks like a bit of a dumb idea if you're Norway. You say, hang on a minute, what do we do guarding Korea's stone? And the reason is, again, Norway not thinking stone by stone. They're really thinking all the way through to the conclusion of the end after 8 stones are thrown by each team, and they still want to take advantage of that free guard zone. Korea not allowed to remove those stones from play, just thrown by Norway. And Norway are betting that at some point later in the end, they will be able to remove that Korean stone, and then ta-da, they will have their nice guards out front, and it will be they who are sitting close to the middle behind those 2 guards. That's the thinking. So that's why it is the right tactic from Norway, even though it maybe does look a bit peculiar to be putting up guards in front of Korean stones. Don't worry, viewer, there is method in the apparent madness.
Now 3-6.
Da vil du ha
3-5.
3-5.
If the scores are tied after 8 ends, and in this tight game, that is completely possible, we will play an extra end. And both teams, the time clock will reset to 6 minutes each, so you don't have to save up time, just in case you think an extra end might be coming. You don't have to save time on the regulation clock. Both teams will have 6 minutes to play an extra end if needed.
2-2.
That's not helping Norway's plan. That stone was supposed to curl a bit more and then bump off the Korean stone and roll towards the centre. That's handed an opportunity now to Korea.
3번이 1번이랑 똑같은 거잖아.
아니야. 3번은 괜찮은 거야. 2번이랑 같아.
That miss from Norway means that Korea can really now try to start consolidating their position in the centre, make it harder for Norway to remove that Korean stone, make it harder for Norway to replace that and be behind cover themselves.
Wait.
4초.
Yeah, that's another good effort from Korea. It's Korea who have last stone in this 5th end, sorry, in the 7th end. And if Korea even just score 1 point here, 1 red, that would make the score 6-4. And Norway would be looking for 2 points just to take the game to an extra end. And not easy, as we've seen in wheelchair curling. The degree of difficulty of the shots higher than non-wheelchair curling. And Korea would be in quite a good position if they can score at all in this end. But that's better for Norway. Don't worry that yellow stone is only 4th closest to the centre. That's a yellow stone that Norway can use next time. That's a dangerous stone for Korea, that Norwegian stone just thrown. That's a nice angle. You can see if you would attack that yellow, drive it back towards those reds. And Korea making the universal signal for timeout. Both teams have a 1 minute timeout. They can call at any point. And this is a good decision from Korea. It's a very critical point in this game. Let's make sure we make the right decision. What's the best thing to do? So the Korean coach, they will walk down to the end of the sheet, and once they get there, a 1-minute timeout will start where the teams can discuss with the coach what to do.
정타만 맞으면 좋긴 한데 이게 좀
욕심내지 말고 일단
그러니까 잘못 치면
후공이지만 3개가 들어있고
앞에 가드라에 열어버리고 괜찮을 거.
이걸 뭐 시키냐? 내가 할게. 왜 와?
네. 네가 들어야지.
아니.
I think that's the Korean coach in the background. We can see them arriving. We're in the 7th end, so we're at the opposite end of the ice rink to where the coaches are actually sitting, so it takes them a little bit longer to show up. But the 1-minute timeout starts only once they've arrived.
이거 어떻게
왜요? 이거 들어와야지 하나 들어와야지. 그쪽으로 인턴으로 넓게 봐서 하나 들어와.
이쪽으로요?
이거 때려도 맞으면 잼 난다고.
네.
어? 맞고 튕겨 나오잖아.
이쪽으로 들어야 된다고?
이쪽으로 들어와야지. 인턴으로 넓게 봐서.
탭 할 수도 있잖아.
탭은 지금
탭도
살짝만
보여서 탭도 있어요.
나중에
이거
보이면
여기다
치잖아.
박으면 안 돼요?
이거 지금
탭 들어와도
이 길 박으면 안 돼요?
어차피 이걸 막는 건 어때요?
잘못 막으면은 때려버리면 놈 들어와 버려.
치면
돌리는 게 낫지 않아? 하나 들어오는 게?
그래서 이제 안 되면 우리가 뭘 좀 먹을 수 있는 사람.
이게 3개가 너무
그
좋아.
앞에다 하나 가드 하나 넣을 거야?
우선 제 생각은 여기.
그래, 오케이.
You can see the umpire diligently keeping the 1-minute timeout, a little tap on the shoulder.
아니 노란색에 붙어도 돼요.
Says that 1 minute's now over. Korea in a good position, as you can see. They have 3 red stones already counting. That's 1, 2, 3 reds closest to the centre. And just wanted to confer with the coach because they don't want to do the wrong thing here and blow this advantage, so to say. They don't want to give Norway a chance to spoil this good position that they have, and that's why it's important to make sure that they're doing the right thing. It can be helpful to get independent eyes.
넉넉히 잡아.
재혁이 형 아니네. 재혁이 형인 줄 알았어.
더. 이거 아까 12 정도 떨어졌어. 하나만. 더 잡아야 될 것 같아.
더 잡아야 될 것 같아.
12!
내가
더 빼달라고?
그러니까 나중에 탭하면 그거 할까 봐.
성훈이 형! 더 빼달라는 거야?
거기.
많이 남았잖아, 지금.
So much chat later. Off the stone goes.
떼면 안 돼요.
Korea lost their first 2 games. Norway won their first 2 games.
여기가 아닌데.
Very well matched though in this session 5 encounter.
좋아요.
And as is often the case, if one team uses a timeout, that would typically signify it's a complex situation. And you quite often see the other team using their timeout shortly afterwards. And indeed, Norway have made the T signal. They do also want to use their timeout, and now it's time for Norway's coach to come from the other end of the ice rink and offer advice. If Norway want to hang on to this game, critical to make a good decision here.
Men hvis du ser linja herfra, så ser du at den skygger litt den I midten, altså, I forhold til å kunne treffe shotten.
Det mulig å gjøre en dragning her.
Ja. Du har tatt nedstreff på den da. Ja. Da spørs det hvordan den linja blir etterpå, til at du hjelper dem der.
Ja, jeg tror det litt sånn til at den gulen kommer til å treffe den røde I midten der først, og ikke treffe den på shotten.
Vi har 4 stener igjen. Vi kan bygge oppover, dra frysen. Ja. Til slutt så selvfølgelig prøver de å gale, men da har du den tapp-muligheten der på siste sten. Eventuelt.
Det vi kan oppnå at en reste treffer på den, så treffer han den toeren og dytter den litt utover, og så sklir han inn der.
Ja da.
Men det er jo bakkantfart da, som gjelder i så fall.
Du kan dra rundt, bygge på frys.
Linje er kanskje ned på frys. Ja, det er jo selvfølgelig frys her.
Okej.
Ja, vad tänker du ellers?
Jag gillar gärna den, flytta på den gule framåt.
Gjør noe før det er for sent.
Innan det är för sent, ja. Så en gard till där så stoppar upp det.
Ja, 15 fart da.
Och hvis ikke det sen nästa steg då, det är att klära den garden utifrån. Den första där uppe.
Kanske ber att klira
få dem häråt. Så det händer någonting.
Center.
Klära den yttersta första garden på utsidan. Så du dykte de två häråt.
Er det ikke bedre å klire i midten da?
Jag hade hellre klerat den första på utsidan och så
Vi
fått...
prøver å få flytta den litt inn da.
Ja.
Ja.
Det er hekkfart maks, egentlig. Altså.
Ja.
Ja, 12 er nok greit.
Ja.
So 1 minute powwow with the Norwegian coach. That's actually Peter Dahlman from Sweden. And neither my Norwegian nor Swedish language is any good, but as far as I understand, not so unusual for Norwegian folks to understand Swedish and vice versa.
Kører ikke så mye som vi tror der, Jostein, synes jeg.
ikke det.
Ja.
So like we said, not the end of the world if Korea score 1 red in this end, but if Korea score any more than that, Norway's life going to be very, very difficult in the 8th end. And that's what they will have been concentrating on. It's not only about this stone. They will have been discussing with Peter Dahlman all the way through to the conclusion of this end. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the call was, but I'm not sure that shot really helps them. I don't think that's given them additional options, at least for future stones, let's say. I think they didn't quite catch the angle they were looking for there. And Korea, they're just going to keep piling that pressure on. Korea would love to get their first win on the board against mighty Norway.
Okay, wait a minute.
That's fine for Korea. They're already lying 1, 2, 3 red stones there in the house, and what that stone has done has blocked the blocked the clockwise handle on the right of the sheet as we see it. And that means it does block it for Korea, but importantly it blocks it for Norway. Norway, there you can see, very difficult now for Norway to play on that clockwise handle on the left as we saw it there. Life not getting any easier for Norway out there. They're going to need every ounce of their championship experience. And another stone slipping by there. They're going to need a bit of magic, Norway. The whole game slipping by somewhat at the moment.
약간 롱가도 괜찮아요. 내 생각엔.
너무 많은 것 같아. 조금만 줄여줘 봐봐, 승남아.
화이팅.
Korea in a really happy position in this 7th end. And what a scalp that would be, this Norwegian team. Tons of experience between them. As we said right at the beginning, there has been at least one member of this Norwegian team representing Norway at every single wheelchair curling competition at Paralympics since the very first time we had wheelchair curling, which was in 2006. So gosh, what a scalp that would be. And that man out there, Jae Hyuk, having a super game. And again, Ole Fredrik Siversen. His number's a bit down compared with the first 2 games, which Norway won, and that in large part because of the pressure that Korea are putting on them. The back end for Norway, the third and fourth throwers, facing increasingly difficult shots.
Så må du prøve den som jeg prøver på hele tiden.
Ja, nå ligger 3 der.
Ja, du må gå hardt da. Gå fra linja.
Skip stones to come, fourth stones to come in the 7th end of this really intriguing encounter between Paralympic debutants Korea. At least this team is new for Paralympics. And Paralympic Titans Norway.
Ja, du bestemmer.
Tid. Jeg vil bare rydde opp i 28 på linja, vi.
Ja, på den rød.
Ja. Det blir for vanskelig.
Ja. Du får bare prøve å sprenge og se hva som skjer.
So we need a bit of magic here from Norway's skip Jostein Stordal with his 2 last stones. That certainly made it better than it was, but not quite making that big breakthrough that Norway need to really make a difference in this end. Korea still lying 3, those 1, 2, 3 red stones beautifully in line from the centre. What a nice angle that is. Those are still lying 3 Korean stones, and no easy access for Norway to either use that yellow on the other side of the centre line. That side's also blocked. There, the yellow that's just in front of that little line of reds. No access really for Norway to try to use that stone. The angle's not set up well. And any sort of triple or quadruple takeout, that is a huge ask if you are not a wheelchair player. So if you have your sweepers and you can use a big leg drive, not at all easy to throw a huge weight with upper body strength only. And Korea in a very nice position. The more stones they have in that nice little line, the less likely Norway can move them on. This is Norway's last stone. We need something special from Jostein Stordal. Otherwise, I feel like Korea could potentially wrap the game up already here in the 7th end. They have a pile of red ones just all hanging around the front there. So something a bit special here from skip Jostein Stordal needed. Stone just over curled a bit. I think he was looking to actually even run the stone all the way along that line. If that stone had curled just a little bit less, if he had just then had the caught the edge of the first of the reds, he could have really kind of tried to bounce himself along and try to get a bit closer to the centre, but that stone over curling, and oh boy, Korea are on for a hatful here.
그러면 돼. 3점이니까 그냥 이쪽 들어가고 안 되면 그냥 포기하는 게 어떠냐. 4점 차이니까. 그거 이쪽으로.
아니 이쪽으로 그냥
이것도 괜찮을 것 같아.
하얀 데만 담으면 되니까.
살짝 이게 더 낫겠다. 살짝 우리 거 쳐도 되니까.
썼던 데가 더
타이트만 하지 마.
타이트만 안 하면 될 것 같아.
타이트만 하지 마.
Korea already lying 3 for sure.
자, 화이팅.
And definitely options to make another point at least, if not 2. Last stone then for
괜찮은 것 같은데.
Go Seong-nam.
가자. 괜찮은 것 같은데.
3치. 좋아.
Still the
맞습니다.
I was going to say the most accurate thrower out there. That's actually Norwegian made, but he's made that one perfectly. That's a peach. And look at that. That is a huge score of 4 reds to Korea. What an end from them. Just kept it simple, kept between those stones in the house.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, that's enough for Norway. That score of 4. That is enough to finish the game here in the 7th end. And what a win for Korea.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Congratulations to you, Korea. Korea had lost their first 2 games, but gosh, they came to play tonight, didn't they? They had a really bright start against real giants of the game, Norway. And yeah, congratulations, Korea. A thumping win in the end. 9 shots to 4 against the vastly experienced Norway. And I'm sure Norway will bounce back, but what a way to start off your win column. Here's that final shot. He just pops it forward, just a couple of stones, and safely gets that 4th point on the board. Just a great end there from Korea. Norway having to take a few risks, their level of difficulty higher in that 7th end because Norway were having to chase the game, but Korea still have to play their shots to keep that pressure on, and oh boy, did they. And little Shui Ronron and her human friend very happy with this evening's curling. They've been able to watch the home team China as well, and Korea very happily signing that scorecard. Well deserved from Korea. They worked very hard for that victory. Norway a bit frustrated with that. So first win on the board then for the team from Korea, and that will certainly give them a good feeling. The final score confirmed then, 9 shots to 4 for Korea over Norway. And how does that affect the standings? So Norway still riding high. They're still in 3rd place with 2 wins and 1 loss, but look at Korea. They're now in 7th place with 1 win and 2 losses. That's really bumped up their confidence. And we can see, exactly as we really saw in the game, plenty of good stuff coming from Norway, but Korea just managing to make a few critical shots, getting a couple of critical misses from Norway, and keeping that end very simple in the 7th end and forcing Norway to make the difficult shots. Norway not quite making the difficult shots, and Korea running out winners. Well, what an exciting lineup that was for us curling fans on day 2 here at the Ice Cube in Beijing. We had Korea, who were on 0 wins and 2 losses, looking for their first win up against some real giants of the wheelchair curling game and Paralympics. Norway, who were on 2 wins and 0 losses. And what a game we had. Both teams starting really strongly, using the hammer very efficiently, exchanging 2s for the first 3 ends. But then Korea just starting to make some critical shots, get some really nice draws in the house, just starting to get a few misses from Norway. And finally, the gap a little bit too far for Norway. Norway taking risks, not coming off, and Korea running out with their first win, 9 shots to 4.